weekday peak periods, morning and evening hour peak periods. Those extreme cases, no different than when we do traffic studies for example, retail centers or malls. We evaluate for a typical peak period that you're going to experience and see throughout the majority of the year. We don't evaluate that 1 or 2 week peak time around the holiday season at retail centers. So mitigations and requirements are based on a typical weekday period.
Well, Mr. Prisk indicated that it was his understanding that the seasonal influx would last 14 days. Was there any verification do you know where he got that understanding? And was there any verification that it would be 14 days?
No, and that particular period was not part of the study.
So we know that given the fact that can be a seasonal influx, that the capacity of the distribution center is larger than what was considered in the simulation. Is there any, and there's no requirement that, as a matter of fact, Amazon couldn't decide to use that increased capacity every day of the year, for example. Is that correct?
I'm not sure I'm following what your question is.
I'm asking, is it possible that, as a matter of fact, it wouldn't be 14 days, that it could be 140 days or every day of the year, that Amazon would decide to use the increased capacity of the plant?
Lots of things are possible.
Okay, so that's not it.
Our process is to evaluate all of the information that we have available to us, whether it's local data, information from the developer's consultant, PennDOT data, national data, all of this information, taking all of this information, all of this data, and kind of building the puzzle of the projections and models are going to look like.
Excuse me.
Mr. Haberman, I apologize.
Yeah.
Did you leave the animal outside, Mr. Spirtes?
I'm sorry, my dog was whining.
Yes, we know.
And Gavin, I could not hear Mike. He kept cutting in and out.
Yeah, Mike, your connection isn't great. It's not as bad as mine, but it's not great. Do you want to try microphone off, or camera off and see if it comes through any better?
Sure. Tell me if that's any better.
Kim, is that better? Yeah, it sounds better to us. Thanks, Mike.
Okay. Now I don't remember what the question was or what I was starting to say.
Mr. Spirtes, could you ask the question again, please?
Yeah, I was just saying that it is possible, given that the distribution center can handle more trucks than was used in the simulation study, there's no guarantee that the quote seasonal influx won't last 10 times as long, or it could be every day of the year. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, that's correct. I don't speak in guarantees and absolutes. I mean, there's a whole lot. It could also open, and it's possible that it could open and the next day it could close. I mean, there's a lot of possibilities. So we're taking all of the information that we can gather from their consultant, from national data, and we're reviewing the information that's provided to us to consult the borough on our opinion as experts and our experience, whether or not what they're proposing to do would mitigate the anticipated traffic impacts associated with this development, which is typical for any development.
Well, Mr. Prisk's testimony was that it was his understanding that it would be 14 days a year. So that doesn't seem like a very concrete source of data. Do you know where the 14 days came from, or what the seasonal influx would be? Do you know how many trucks would be talking about in a seasonal influx? Or why he thought it would be 14 days, or whether that was typical?
I think
I
you may
do
need
not
to
know,
repeat
and,
that. I'm sorry. Were you able to get that question, Mike? We weren't able to pick it
Yeah,
up very well.
I don't know. I can't speak to his testimony on where he got that information. That was his testimony that he provided. That the condition that we're talking about isn't the condition that is analyzed in the traffic study anyway. So I couldn't opine as to the number of days or what the influx volume would be.
Well, it's not analyzed in the study, but if it did turn out to be typical, it should have been analyzed in the study, shouldn't it?
Like, we're speaking in hypotheticals again. We're you, and it's and again, and there's discussion about, you know, Gateway's role. What we've done. Our role and my role in reviewing the traffic was not in a vacuum. This is a coordinated effort that's gone on for almost 2 years between Gateway, review comments, a series of review comments with Langen, series of meetings, PennDOT coordination. I review studies for municipalities. I coordinate all of my reviews with other governing agencies, the county and PennDOT specifically on this project. We're all in the same industry. We all do the same thing. We all see the same things. We all have the same questions. So you'll see a lot of consistencies between Gateway's reviews and what you're going to see out of PennDOT and the county, because the standards are what they are, and we coordinate those reviews together. So I wasn't reviewing any of this in a vacuum. There's a whole lot of input from a whole lot of people other than Langen. We're taking what they provided, and we're providing the comments that we have in our exhibits, and you see the stacks of comment letters, and you can read through all the comments we've had. So I think it's evident from our reviews that not anything was really taken at face value. There's a whole lot that went into making a determination on where we ended up.
Do you independently verify the models that they use?
Yes.
So you
they send the analysis models to us, and that's part of our review.
So when they run the software and they choose all the parameters, you review all of those parameters?
Correct. And they don't choose the parameters. The parameters are a majority of the parameters are parameters that have been established where, and anything that's adjusted is based on actual data. So there's no random or chosen adjustments to parameters to get results that are favorable. So that's specifically part of what we review.
You're saying they have no choice at all about any of the parameters?
That's correct.
Does Gateway independently verify the conclusions that there would be no harm in the instances that Langen said that there would be no harm?
I'd never say harm. I speak in terms of traffic impacts and then mitigation of those impacts. Harm is a relative term.
So let me ask Mr. Flynn then. More generally, that some of the reports say there would be no harm. Is that something that when Gateway approves a study, is that something that that you are endorsing?
Gateway approves a study, we are determining that it has met the standards that exist, that it has met the standards in the methodology in order to come to those determinations and conclusions, and that it is within the acceptable standards associated with that.
Then maybe you can clarify for me, when your Gateway's lawyer first asked a series of questions, he was explaining what it was that Gateway did not do. And can you explain? At this point, I'm just puzzled as to what it is he was saying that you weren't endorsing. Can you explain your understanding of his questions?
I'm not exactly sure what exactly you're referring to within what he stated. I believe what he stated is that we would not make the legal determination as to whether or not it meets the conditional use criteria as a whole. That we are specifically reviewing each study that is called out by the ordinance and by the code for us to review and provide a determination or provide an approval on. And with that, we reviewed it based on existing standards, quantitative standards, in order to provide an objectionable review of that.
So each study that you approve, you are endorsing basically the Langen conclusions of that study as having been reached in a proper way with the proper inputs, the proper models, etc.
I don't believe the use of endorsement is the proper word. I think Mr. Haberman also already said that.
Well, it's approved, but what I'm trying to get, what is it? When Gateway says that we're approving this study, what's the claim that is being made?
Well, if you look at section 304-37.1B, it says the applicant shall provide a traffic study establishing that the traffic generated at the site will not have a material negative impact on the neighborhood, which study shall be subject to review and approval by the borough engineer. As the testimony was given, they look at the information and methodology provided by the applicant in the traffic study, and they make a determination whether that study establishes that the traffic generated from the use will not have a material negative impact on the neighborhood. So to the extent that the traffic study establishes that, Gateway reviews it. As Gateway testified, they look at the methodology and the standards that should be applied. And if the report implements those and shows that there's no material negative impact, then they accept the report. But they don't say that the conditional use standard has been met, nor does Gateway state that a conditional use should be approved or denied. Gateway is not the ultimate arbiter of whether that information should justify the grant of the sought after use.
But are they saying, for instance, in the part of the ordinance which refers to the traffic study, when Gateway approves the traffic study, are they saying it meets that particular portion of the ordinance? That as a matter of fact, they have satisfied that particular portion of the ordinance.
I think I just answered that question for you. So unfortunately, you're asking for legal advice and guidance. And with all due respect, I don't represent you, and nor does Mr. Robb. So we can't provide that information.
Well, that's why I was asking Mr. Flynn what he understood himself to be doing when he approves these things.
And he answered that, and you're asking him now for a legal analysis, and he's an engineer.
So nobody is ever going to tell us what exactly this approval means?
Gateway is not issuing any type of approval of a use. I just explained that to you. They are approving the submission of a report with the understanding that it follows a methodology and meets a standard on its face. And Mr. Ferguson already established that there are other subsequent reports that may have been submitted by those in opposition, contesting what might have been submitted by the applicant. Gateway's role is not to look at both and sort through them and pick one over the other. It just accepted a report that was submitted as establishing, for example, with traffic, that traffic generated at the site will not have a material negative impact.
The ordinance says which study shall be subject to review and approval by the borough traffic.
I'm sorry, Mr. Spirtes, I apologize for interrupting, and I think Mr. Ayob as well. I think we're getting off track here. Mr. Spirtes, we already are over our 11 o'clock time limit. Do you have multiple more questions that we want to try to knock out now, or do you want to save it till the next?
I'll save it to the next time.
Okay. All right. So, thanks everybody for your patience tonight. My understanding is, Alex, can you confirm for me that the council does want to stick with the 8 o'clock on October 4th to recess until that time period to pick this back up again?
That is correct.
Okay, so folks will be able to access this by way of the same link on the borough website as you got here tonight. And I think unless there's any other housekeeping items, Mr. Ferguson, Mr. Ayob, Mr. Gallagher, anything we need to cover before we depart tonight?
No, thank you.
Okay, nobody else?
No,
All
thanks.
right, thanks everybody. Have a good night.